For decades, American culture told men a simple story: work hard, build something, find a partner, start a family, and meaning will follow. Love was framed as the reward for effort, commitment, and responsibility. But something quiet has been changing beneath the surface, not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. And by 2026, that change becomes impossible to ignore. 2026 will not be remembered as the year men rebelled. It will be remembered as the year men quietly stepped back. Not out of anger, not out of bitterness, but out of exhaustion, self-preservation, and a growing realization that solitude feels safer than misunderstanding. This isn't the story of men giving up. It's the story of men opting out of a system that no longer feels built for them. Across America, men are disengaging from dating, delaying marriage indefinitely, avoiding emotional exposure, and choosing solitude not because they don't want connection, but because connection has become emotionally expensive. The solo man isn't a stereotype. He's not antisocial. He's not hostile toward women. He's not incapable of love. He's a man who once tried and learned that trying often came at a cost he no longer wants to pay. The rise of the solo man isn't about loneliness. It's about peace. Modern men are not walking away from women. They're walking away from instability, emotional instability, financial instability, legal instability, identity instability. For many men, relationships have become places where effort is expected, vulnerability is requested, but safety is never guaranteed. So they adapt. They become quieter, more self-contained, less reactive, less expressive, less invested. Not because they're cold, but because they learned that openness without protection leads to loss. In previous generations, men were socialized to endure. They were taught to absorb pressure silently, to keep moving, to provide regardless of how they felt. That endurance once had a destination: family, respect, partnership, legacy. But today, many men no longer see a clear reward for that sacrifice. They see risk without assurance, responsibility without appreciation, vulnerability without protection. And when a man no longer sees a reason to sacrifice himself emotionally, he doesn't rage. He retreats. By 2026, the cumulative weight of cultural shifts will push more men into choosing solitude as a rational decision. Dating apps that reduce people to profiles, social media that magnifies comparison, economic pressures that delay stability, relationship expectations that feel endless and undefined, public narratives that frame masculinity as something to apologize for rather than develop. All of these forces converge, and men quietly step aside. The solo man doesn't announce his exit. He just stops playing. He stops chasing validation. He stops initiating conversations that go nowhere. He stops opening emotional doors that later get used against him. He stops negotiating his identity to appear acceptable. He stops trying to translate his inner world into words that never seem to land right. Instead, he builds a smaller, quieter life, one where he controls his environment, his time, his peace. This isn't a collapse of masculinity, it's a recalibration. Many men today grew up hearing two contradictory messages. On one hand, they were told to be strong, confident, decisive, ambitious. On the other hand, they were told that those same traits could be threatening, toxic, or outdated. They were told to lead, but not too much. To speak, but not assertively. To be emotional, but not heavy. Vulnerable, but not weak. Present, but not demanding. Assertive, but not dominant. This double bind creates paralysis. When every expression risks criticism, silence becomes the safest option. By 2026, more men will choose environments where expectations are clear and consequences are predictable. Work, fitness, solitude, structure, hobbies, quiet routines. These become safer emotional investments than relationships that feel constantly evaluated. The solo man isn't afraid of women. He's tired of being misunderstood by them. He's tired of emotional conversations turning into interrogations. Tired of his words being reframed as intentions he never had. Tired of having to justify his feelings instead of having them received. Tired of being told to open up, only to watch respect subtly fade when he does. Tired of emotional labor that never seems to be acknowledged as labor. So he learns a different lesson. Peace is not found in being understood, it's found in being undisturbed. Economic reality plays a role too. In America, men still feel an unspoken expectation to provide, even as financial stability becomes harder to achieve. Inflation rises. Housing becomes inaccessible. Career ladders feel unstable. Many men delay milestones not because they lack ambition, but because the ground beneath them feels uncertain. And uncertainty doesn't mix well with long-term promises. Men don't want to build families on shaky foundations. They don't want to commit while feeling behind. They don't want to expose financial vulnerability in a culture that still equates worth with success. And rather than enter relationships from a place of insecurity, they choose to wait or opt out entirely. The solo man isn't lazy, he's cautious. There's also a legal undercurrent many men don't speak about publicly. Divorce, custody battles, financial losses, reputational damage. These stories circulate quietly among men. They don't dominate headlines, but they dominate private conversations. Men see what happens when relationships fail, and they notice that the consequences often fall unevenly. This doesn't make men hostile. It makes them risk-averse. Love becomes something they want, but only if it doesn't require gambling their future. Culturally, men also feel that admiration has been replaced by expectation. Effort is assumed. Sacrifice is minimized. Emotional restraint is criticized. Emotional expression is risky. In that environment, many men conclude that it's better to invest in places where output matches input. Gym results are measurable. Career progress is trackable. Solitude is predictable. Relationships feel increasingly ambiguous. By 2026, the solo man is not an extremist position. He's the default outcome of years of emotional friction. He's the man who still believes in connection, but refuses to pursue it at the cost of his mental health. He's the man who no longer wants to explain himself to be accepted. He's the man who chooses alignment over attraction, peace over performance, solitude over survival mode. Importantly, this shift isn't anti-woman. Many men still admire women deeply. They respect women's independence, intelligence, ambition. But admiration alone doesn't sustain intimacy. Safety does. And for many men, safety is no longer something they associate with relationships. The rise of the solo man also reveals something uncomfortable. Men and women have been evolving at different speeds and in different directions. Women have been encouraged to develop emotional literacy, self-advocacy, independence, and self-expression. Men have been encouraged to adapt silently, to do better without guidance, to unlearn without replacement, to change without a map. This creates asymmetry. Women expect emotional fluency. Men offer emotional restraint. Women interpret restraint as immaturity. Men interpret emotional intensity as instability. Both sides feel unseen. So men step away not because they think women are wrong, but because they don't know how to meet expectations that feel undefined and constantly shifting. By 2026, solitude becomes a form of self-respect. The solo man still desires companionship, but he wants it without constant negotiation of his identity, without being treated as a project, without having to perform emotional availability on demand, without fear that vulnerability will be cataloged and later weaponized. He wants consistency, clarity, mutual effort, calm. Until that exists, he chooses himself. This doesn't mean society is doomed, but it does mean relationships will change. Fewer casual connections, fewer rushed commitments, more guarded hearts, more men opting for slower, quieter lives, more emphasis on personal stability before emotional exposure. The rise of the solo man forces a question no one wants to ask. Have relationships become emotionally sustainable for men? If the answer is no, withdrawal isn't rebellion, it's adaptation. The solo man isn't a failure of masculinity. He's a response to an environment that hasn't learned how to hold male vulnerability without trying to reshape it. He's a man who learned that being whole alone is better than being fragmented together. And unless something changes, unless emotional safety becomes mutual, unless admiration returns, unless effort is reciprocated, unless men are allowed to exist without constant correction, 2026 won't be the peak of this shift. It will be the beginning. This is Mendecoded, where we don't demonize women, don't shame men, and don't ignore reality. We decode it.